Good evening. This is the November 13th, 2008 Shade Tree Commission meeting. We've got a number of items on the agenda tonight. We'll start in the usual way with tree permit and tree right-of-way issues. The first one, I believe we've got Stephanie Goldsberry here to ask us about some planting that she'd like to do at the intersection of Tulane and Woodside. So.
Not Stephanie. Ron Lucas, City of Athens Street Department, Street Maintenance Specialist and Certified Arborist. Let me give you a little history of the intersection of Tulane and Woodward. There's a significant amount of right-of-way at that intersection, and recently there's been some activity there regarding some clearing of the ditch and some tree and stump removal that the street department has done. The goal is to improve that area a little bit. In September, I met with Stephanie Goldsberry as a street maintenance specialist to talk about doing some tree removal in the ditch line. And Stephanie asked me if we could remove a large stump that was crossing a ditch, one of our right-of-way ditches, that has a significant amount of our storm drainage. Because it was a safety hazard for some children in the area, and also to remove some trees that were dropping a lot of limbs and things of that nature in the ditch. There was also a request to remove a large poison ivy vine from a sycamore tree on Woodward. Reviewed it with another maintenance tech of the street departments, and we didn't seem to have any issues with it. It seemed like a legitimate thing. We didn't know the long-term history of the area. Stephanie had done a significant amount of work there in terms of removing some of the scrub and brush and poison ivy from the ditch, and also doing some mowing work on that area and adding a bench for a number of walkers in that area to use as a rest area. The key from Stephanie's standpoint has been safety of the site, visibility in terms of clearance of street signage, and that turn in general. There was a large honeysuckle there that was trimmed back, and some of the mowing. The community has, in general, shown some pleasure in the work that was done there. As far as our work was concerned from the street department, when we went there to do the tree removals, we had finished removing the large stump that was crossing the ditch when we were approached by, we meaning myself and a couple of our maintenance techs, were approached by a couple members of the neighborhood, and they were really giving us a hard time about the removal of the trees, and they said some things that I could talk about at the end of the meeting if anybody wants to hear, but they were insults towards myself and towards Stephanie. At that point, I decided to shut the work down and think about a way to communicate with the neighbors and the tree commission on what we should do with this site. That leads us to now. There was an email sent out on October 13th, I believe, from me to the members of the tree commission and Ann Bonner, and basically that was pretty much what I just said, what this email. Ann Bonner had a response to it, and it's a fairly long response. If anybody wants to review it, I have it here. And Stephanie also responded to the email. And it sounds like there's been some miscommunications over the years in terms of that area. So basically what we're down to is Stephanie wants to improve the area. It's a right-of-way area, and it has a significant amount of opening to it. I agree with Stephanie in terms that it is a good planting site. And what Stephanie has proposed is to plant 2 memory trees in dedication of a couple neighbors that were in that area of Tulane, Woodward, and Guffey Lane, and 1 shade tree. And to replace the ground cover on the bank with something a little bit more pleasant, not poison ivy. So that's where we are in terms of that project, and leaving the concept of that being a neighborhood rest park for walkers in the area. So the proposed trees are, for the dedication trees, are a flowering dogwood and a flowering crab. The shade tree is probably going to be open to, if we do decide that would be a good planting site, up to the tree commission. So if there's any further questions or comments of myself or Stephanie, I guess now would be a good time to do that.
Could you just clarify who would be paying for the trees?
That hasn't been solved. One of the things, since it's a right-of-way issue, that I thought of and that Stephanie thought of, is that it could be a tree commission thing. Stephanie has also expressed some interest in possibly purchasing the trees, but there's been no decision on that yet.
Okay.
I do have a map showing the area, if anybody would like to see it. I wish I could have got it on the internet.
Well,
Yeah, I would like to see it.
I mean, the way that it's supposed to be.
when I visited the site, it wasn't clear to me that it would really accommodate more large shade trees.
Here is heading north on Tulane. Here's Woodward. This is the triangle.
Yeah, there's quite a number of large trees along the creek there. And it wasn't clear to me that you would want to plant any more large shade trees, but certainly dogwoods and the like would be good trees to put in that area.
That was just what was proposed.
Yeah.
So, again, no decision's been made on that site. I thought we could talk about it here to try to eliminate a lot of the miscommunications that are going on.
Are there any more removals that are need to be occurring in that area?
On the ditch line itself, there's a number of trees that are having some problems in terms of dropping branches and things of that nature. It wouldn't hurt anything to take a couple of those out of there.
Okay. Are these larger trees?
No.
Okay.
No, they're more scrub trees.
I would have one question about planting dogwoods. The dogwood and anthracnose is coming into this area, and if dogwoods are used, I think that special care should be taken to get dogwoods that are resistant to the dogwood and anthracnose.
That sounds like that would be a good decision. And again, there's been no.
And I could supply information about ones that would be.
And that hasn't been set in stone in terms of what we would be planting there if we do plant anything.
But I do think trees that grow on the fringe of a woodland that would be ideal in that spot because it's on the north side of those larger shade trees.
If it's a shaded situation, then probably a crabapple would not do as well as it would in full sun then.
Yeah. What about hawthorn? Is that?
Well, they like quite a bit of sun. Amelanchier, redbud.
Yeah, redbud would be a nice one there. Yeah. We can come up with a list anyway. But I think the other consideration is if we give permission for someone to plant in the right-of-way, then we presumably will assume responsibility for maintenance. And that's the other consideration that we have to make whenever we get this sort of request. And I don't see any problems. I mean, there are a lot of trees in that area anyway. They're in the right of way, and adding 2 or 3 more decorative trees, I think, wouldn't overburden us in that sense. But that is also a consideration that we have to think about. I don't particularly want to give a decision tonight. I think we need to think about it, think it through. Mrs. Goldsberry, do you want to comment and give us some sort of time frame as to when you might want to plant the trees?
I'm not a patient person right now. I started mowing this little triangle area, which maybe I can point some things out on there. Probably, I'd say about July, just to keep it mowed more often than what the city would get there and cleared back. And people seemed to enjoy it. They'd stop when I was working. Of course, they said, well, if you're going to mow there, come on up. But there are, like we said, there's a couple other scrub trees that I think, that's why I talked to Ron in the first place, that need to come down. And I'm concerned about liability for the city. That stump was an issue. I didn't know if it was petrified or rotten. But some kids had played on it one time, and a parent came and took them off for fear of it collapsing on them. And then one other tree had dropped a big limb. This is sort of how it all started. Big limb fell. I called the city and asked them if they could get it because it was too big for me to haul out to the road or anything for them. And then I had some workmen there doing some other stuff for me, so I said, well, go ahead and cut it up small enough, put it out there, and then maybe the city would get it, and called again a couple times. Anyhow, we finally got it cleared up. But it was obvious that tree otherwise was dead, and that's why the limb fell out. And there was another tree just over from there that has a great deal of dead in it and is probably on its last legs. And if those two were removed, that might be an ideal place for a shade tree because it would open up some of the space there and it would be a good place for one. And then the flowering trees could be in the more open space that would get the sun. And I don't know much, I just try to keep them growing. I can't say that I'm real good at what to plant. And I have talked to Ron and I said, I'm willing to help try to maintain the area, and I've already tried to do that. And I'm basically asking, number one, suggestions, because I don't know plants very well. They either grow or don't with me. And to hopefully get the tree commission to be able to buy the trees, or the city put them in, or something, and ground cover suggestion. We've got ivy going along the side that's closest to us on the creek, and it's going very well. But it gets more sun. So the side that's on the road side of Woodside doesn't get as much sun, so whatever shade, whatever ground cover we put there might need something that doesn't require as much sun. But I'm very willing to try to help maintain it, water it, tend to it, whatever it takes, to get it up there, because we really enjoy the neighborhood, others enjoy it, and I think that it's made an improvement with me mowing more often, because as I said, one response I told Ron that the neighborhood, of course, their dogs would go there and whatever, and some were good about cleaning it up, some weren't, but when it was not maintained, they didn't clean it up. And now that I've been mowing it, there isn't as much of that, so people know that we're trying to make it something that's pleasant for people to enjoy when they're taking a walk. So whatever you could do and help with that, I would appreciate it, and I am willing to help, and I think you could ask anybody and have that verified. Okay. Any other questions? Or
No, thank you very much for all your help.
Okay,
in, keeping
thank
it
you.
tidy. So what do we think? I mean, obviously, we aren't going to be putting it on the tree planting list for this year because we've already just done that exercise.
So we don't have any funding or availability to plant.
No, the timing just would be all wrong. But
Right.
And so in terms of a shade tree, that would definitely have to go on to next year. I don't see any reason that we couldn't get permission for Mrs. Goldsbury or somebody else to plant decorative trees there.
I would agree.
It looks like we've got some possibilities here. The dogwood, the redbud, the amelanchier would be good suggestions for people if they wanted to plant those sorts of trees. Do we have any recommendation on the ground cover that might work there? Because that may be something that we'll have to ask Ron or the city to plant.
What comes to mind immediately is vinca. There's
Yeah, it would do well even in the partial shade.
a shrub which grows down and will root, and I can't think of the name of it now.
Okay, but we'll get it later.
We can get a list.
Yeah. But it sounds like what we've got here is a site that people living there would like us to improve and to keep it that way if possible. And I'm all
And
for
we
that.
have
If we can
someone willing
find
to
these sites,
maintain
we've got
it.
somebody willing to help maintain it, which is very good. I always like that. So I'll write this up then that we give permission for you to plant these decorative trees if you wish. We'll certainly put this on a planting list for next year in terms of a shade tree.
Neighbors and like the two
Yeah.
memory trees were a suggestion of another neighbor, and I said, well, while we're cleaning this up, how about here? Because they were going to put them in Tulane, and that's pretty full. And so
Yeah.
hopefully, if you
Yeah.
can't fund it, maybe
Yeah.
the neighborhood will go together.
Okay. Yeah.
Because it is in honor of two of our neighbors that passed away.
That's good.
And then we can add the shade tree to our list for
Yes,
next year.
yeah, and we'll ask Ron and Anne to keep an eye on those trees there and try and work out what we should be taking out and what we shouldn't be taking out.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Right. Okay. 22 Ohio. We have a request here for the removal of a large shade tree. The way it's written, it sounds like the property owner is willing to remove it himself. He would like to remove it so that he could have an area to grow food in. Now, I know this site fairly well. Have other tree commissioners had a look at it?
Yeah, I looked at it.
Okay. What's the feeling about giving permission to remove that? I think it says here a pine tree, but I think it's actually a spruce.
It's a Colorado blue spruce.
Yes, a spruce, yeah.
It's quite intertwined with the power lines there, so I'm sure
AEP
its
have-
future life is
Yeah.
one of many haircuts.
Yeah. Well, AEP have already given it a couple of haircuts. That I've
Yeah,
seen.
yeah, I noticed.
I mean, I think if they're willing to remove it, I don't. But
I'm not opposed to it. I mean, it's a healthy tree, but I'm not opposed to it. There is an ash and a white pine not too far down on that same property.
Yeah. So you don't think we should ask them to plant another tree to replace it?
Well, I had a thought that they could plant near the ash and the white pine. I'm not opposed to that either, but I wanted to see what we thought also.
Okay.
There's nothing real close to that tree between that and the house, but
But they could replace it with another spruce of some sort, which would be
They
fairly
could,
slow
yeah.
growing by the time that there's a pine there that presumably will have a limited life.
Mhm.
They often do.
yeah,
And so
and it's mature.
It
yeah.
could take over then. Okay.
And an ash, we already know, has the potential to not have.
Not be there much
Yeah.
longer.
So
Yeah. So is that agreeable then, that we'll give them permission to remove it, but we'll ask them to plant a spruce further down?
Yeah.
If they can.
Yes.
Very good. Okay, I've lost my agenda for the moment. There it is. Okay, landscape ordinance issues. Mr. Valentor, I believe, would like to talk to us about several properties. Would it be easier for you if you sat at the table? You can get up there, can you? Okay. Okay. That's fine. You can help him by any means.
The irony is too much, because you're never going to believe what I fell out of. A tree.
Well, it wasn't a city tree.
Nope. One of my very own that I was trying to trim. Didn't work very well. And I also want to apologize for not getting to this committee sooner, but I coach 8th grade girls volleyball, and every Thursday night since August, I've had games. And I know you guys have had a little bit of anxiety about some of the projects I've been working on, but there was no way I could get here quicker than this, and I barely could do that. And I think the first project that I know that you all are interested in is the status of the Palmer Place job. And if Mr. Miller would take this up there, I have two different sets of drawings here. The one in his right hand represents the previously approved drawings from the Tree Commission. The one in the left hand represents our proposed. This is the proposed. This is middle at this point. And what I'm hoping that you would be inclined to accept is our request to have this project reviewed under the February 18th, 2008 ordinance rather than the October 15th, 2007.
Okay.
I think that there's some features and elements, well, the primary element that changes in the two different proposals that you have there. And I think everybody can drive by that site right now and see actually what's going on, and it is a huge, giant parking lot, especially when you're coming off of Carpenter Street. We've got issues with the Kern Street elevation and the Stimson Avenue elevation. Have power poles that have electrical lines running on both of those property lines, which make it difficult to try to find some kind of tree, shade, something we can do that would make a better cover, or at least a screening for the parking area itself from the primary road.
Yeah.
And if you look on scheme B, the one that I think was in your left-hand, Chuck, remember? The new proposal,
Yeah,
what I try to
it's the
do is
one that has
modify the
fewer-
layout
Yeah.
and
Fewer trees in the
provide
parking lot.
more green space along the Stimson Avenue elevation, that we could actually incorporate larger trees that would be set back off of the power lines, as well as lots of lower trees, more than just a 8-foot row of planting. I think at that elevation, we ended up with almost 25-foot wide planting strip along Stimson Avenue, for at least most of it. I think that that would provide a much better alternative than putting a few trees out in the middle of the parking lot. I still retained a few of the islands so that the intersection of State Street and Carpenter and Stimson would, again, be buffered by, when you look across the property, by larger trees. I kept 4 islands on the far left-hand side if you're coming down from State Street. I'm hoping that you guys look at that and see that there's some value in this kind of an approach here.
Well, I certainly think we're open to considering it under the new landscape ordinance rather than the old one, because we recognise that it does give the developer more flexibility in terms of trying to meet the tree requirements, and therefore we tend, I think, to give fewer exceptions under the new rules than we had to give under the old ones.
Right.
We're not going to be able to make a decision tonight because we need to look at this
Absolutely.
and do the calculations and so on.
I believe 39 large trees were, or 39 trees were required by the new code, and then you can count them
For
all
the
up.
entire site?
Pardon me?
For the entire site?
Just for the parking lot
Oh,
side.
just for the parking lot site?
Okay.
Okay.
Correct.
Yeah.
Actually, I increased the number of trees on the residential side significantly, and there are a couple modifications that you'll see there, primarily in the courtyard itself. Originally, we had planned on putting like 2 trees in the center.
Yep.
Essentially, we've changed that to 6.
Mhm.
And due to the fire department's requirement to get vehicles into that courtyard, we have underneath the sod placed actually a gravel road, so he could get his fire trucks up the center of that courtyard. And that's why we moved the trees from the middle off to the sides,
Yeah.
so that there would be accessibility for emergency vehicles on that piece of property. That was, I don't have any documentation, but that was requested by the fire department.
One question I know we've got is that in terms of meeting the parking requirements, do you now have just enough, or do you have some excess over and above what the city requires for parking?
I think that through all this ups and downs and changing arounds, that we're pretty close to what is required by the city at this point in time.
Okay.
With the underground parking, and we had to make some modifications on the above-ground parking, and it all pretty much equals out right now.
Okay. Well, unless the commissioners have got immediate questions, we'll take these away with us and have a look at them and try and see if we can come to some consensus as to what we think. And we
I'm
may
going to
be
leave
in
you
touch
also with some
for
photographs,
more.
just for the fun of it.
Okay.
Do we know, I can estimate the distance here. Do we have any other information that estimate? Looks like they're 15 feet apart on the,
Well, that's one thing you've got to, this scale isn't correct, is it?
I'm afraid not, and I'll tell you what, I'll bring you scale drawings. I tried to make them convenient. when
Yes,
you
it's-
look at them.
I appreciate them being this size, but
I
we
will
do
get
need to get
Mr.
those
Miller scale drawings so that you can actually
Okay.
do an in-depth review
Please, yeah.
in
yeah.
return.
And I will be asking Mr. Miller as well for the parking requirement to see how well it matches up, because I'm immediately concerned when I see fewer trees in the middle of that parking lot.
From what I've been talking to the owner, striping it during Christmas break, and then we can actually go down and get an actual head count.
Mhm.
So that 6-week time period from Thanksgiving to New Year's. Right now, to go down there, we'd have to do a lot of measurements other than just counting.
What I meant was, we know how many we should know how many parking spaces they need,
Yes.
for the development they've got, and that's a number I'm sure you can give me, and then I'm going to go over this and count them and see where we are, because as I say, my immediate reaction is I'm concerned because there are fewer islands in that large parking lot, and we do like to get as much coverage as we can.
But look at Simpson Avenue. I've got much more square
You
footage
have,
of
and
green space
I
there.
appreciate that, but as I say, that
Doesn't help your parking lot.
yeah.
Okay.
Are there
Okay.
any immediate questions?
Nope.
Okay.
Now, I don't know if it's appropriate, I wanted to bring you another, am I allowed to talk about this one? It's not on the agenda.
Well, what we've got is 6 and 8 Kern Street and then Mill Street. Have you got something else as well?
Well, it's another proposed project on North Lancaster, and I just wanted to let you guys look at it. Eventually, I think I'm going through the site review process from the city, and I wanted you guys to at least have this, so that you can...
Well, we have to sign off before it goes into the site review
That's
process.
correct. And, but I don't think that I have officially submitted this to you. It's the laundromat on the corner of, I don't know what's the street coming off, towards the Athens Middle School and North Lancaster.
Yep.
Yeah, sure doesn't have
Yeah.
any.
No, we can. You can tell us about it now, and we'll have a look at it. And
Okay. What we're doing is going to add a couple stories of residential to that site. We've got available parking on there. I believe there's 19 spaces indicated on that plan right now. A couple of the things that I wanted to try to do was, right now when you drive by there, it's extremely harsh landscape, obviously, between the street and the building itself. Since I can't, by code, even though people park in front of that building right now, that's not legal in terms of the city requirements and space. So I was actually put green space and trees between North Lancaster Street and actually the building. And you can see on that my proposal for where else we would put trees and try to add a little bit of green space to that. And again, staying on the property lines, if you look at that drawing, you'll see where the property lines are versus the roadway. I'd be putting some of the trees on the right-of-way, but trying to keep the required number of trees on the property as much as I could.
yeah, no, we have given permission in the past for trees to be put on the right of way for a business
Okay.
like this. So I mean, immediately I can't see any particular problems, but obviously we'll have to take this away, look at it.
If you can,
carefully.
I mean, would you do that and give me a response based on that drawing right there, even though I don't have the trees selected? I mean, can you, at some point,
If you can tell me the area of the
The
property.
square footage. Yeah.
What's the square footage?
I should write you a letter and indicate the areas?
You can tell me, if you can tell me now, I could
Well, I don't
give you
know
an answer.
exactly what the square footage is.
Basically, what we're going to do is we're going to take that area and divide by
130,
1,767, and that is the number of trees that you've got to plant, large shade trees
I
you have
will
to
then
plant.
write you a letter indicating what the square footage of the paved areas versus the square footage of the...
Well, no, it's easier just to get, with a development like this, what we found is that we have to just look at the entire
But I
footprint
think,
of the
don't you
property.
have pervious surface versus impervious surfaces? There are different ratios for the number of trees required.
Yes, but you have so little
I know.
permeable surface that we don't
Okay.
need to worry about that, I think. That's why I could give you a ballpark now if you gave me the area. And the rule of thumb is just to divide the area
Okay,
by
I haven't
1767.
quite got that far yet.
Yeah. And then once we do that, we can then see how close you are.
Thank
I
you.
couldn't say at the moment how close you are with this. I assume the 1 inch equals 20 foot is a good scale for this one.
Probably not. That might be reduced as well.
1
Okay.
inch equals 20 feet.
I think that's been reduced from a larger sheet.
Okay. Okay.
The-
Well, we'll get back to you as soon as we can on that one.
Okay,
been
fine.
reduced.
That one wasn't on the
Yeah, I
agenda here,
realize.
and I think the next two,
Yeah.
the 6 and
Same
8
with the
Kern
other
Street and the question mark Mill Street are both me, too.
Yes, they
And
are.
both of these are concerned, and I don't know if Ron can help with this kind of thing or not, but if Chuck would just give you these two pictures as well. This is a project that hasn't been really presented before anybody yet that I'm working on, but it's something that came up on 6 and 8 Kern. And I don't think, if I'm not mistaken, that the city of Athens is responsible for trees on the right-of-way. And maybe I can be corrected by that. I thought it was the homeowner's responsibility to maintain the sidewalks and the lawns and everything else all the way out to the edge of the street. I just think that in a lot of cases, in a lot of projects that I'm going to work on, the trees actually don't plop right onto the property. They're on the right-of-way,
Yes.
which in a lot of cases is still the owner's responsibility to maintain. That's a perfect example right now. I'm working
Can I
on
just
projects
correct
on...
something? No.
Hmm?
It's the city maintains the trees on the rights of
They
way.
do?
Yes, under
Okay.
Title 33. That's why we were talking about those first two issues on here.
I
Yeah.
realize that, and I
Yeah.
understand what Ron was up here for and listening, but I was not under the impression that that was actually the
No, we
case.
can-
I mean,
we
if
can
that's
give-
news to me, that's fine, that's fine. What comes into play there is that if I'm required to put more trees on the property, and you can see that the size of those trees there, I'm going to be hard pressed to try to put some shade trees, at least on the street front elevation of that particular piece of property, due to the huge size of the trees that are currently existing.
This is the
And-
Mill Street site we're talking about, is that correct?
This is the Mill Street site we're looking at.
That's
photographs.
a Mill Street property.
Yeah,
That's
'cause
the
there's
question
the
mark
church.
Mill
Back
Street.
at church.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I hope that somehow or other we get some kind of consideration for those trees as being located or being counted in terms of the shade tree requirements for that particular site.
We'll have to think about that one.
Okay. You know, and I guess there's other alternatives. I mean, we could plant trees in other locations of the city, but I just think that in looking at the code and looking at at
Now,
what
the-
you're trying to do, that so many of the trees that are going to end up being on right-of-ways.
Yeah. Now, there is a potential conflict here because Title 33 says that the city maintains the trees on the right-of-way and property owners have to ask permission if they want to prune or remove them. We can, under Title 37, we can grant permission for a business owner to plant trees in the right-of-way for the purposes of fulfilling the landscape ordinance. And then that adjacent owner becomes responsible for the
I
maintenance of
understood
those
that
trees.
when Stephanie was talking there, that the city would actually pay. I mean, I'm not even
Yeah.
remotely
Now,
thinking
and so
that.
what we may have to consider is if there is a business that is adjacent to some large shade trees on the right of way, and that's making it difficult for us to meet the requirements of Title 37, then should we, as part of the arrangement for that property, then transfer the maintenance of those trees from the city to the adjacent property owner.
Right.
I mean, that may be what we finish up doing. In
Okay.
other words, that yes, we might agree with you that it
Okay.
is impossible for you to add more trees in that area, and so therefore we might say, yes, but you're now going to have to maintain those trees. If they need pruning, you're going to have to prune them. If they die,
If we
you're
get
going to
to count
replace
those
them.
as part of the...
Yeah, I mean, that may have to be the compromise, but that is certainly a conflict between Title 33 and
That's fine. I just see
Title
that being a
37.
conflict in the future.
Yeah.
So, thank you very much. That's all I have.
What is the address, by the way, of question mark?
Doesn't
Mill?
have one. There's no building there right now.
What's it between?
It's an empty lot between 68 and 76 Mill Street.
68 and 76, okay.
It's in between there.
Okay.
What's the closest intersection?
Kurtz,
Kurtz and Kern.
Okay, yeah.
Kurtz and Kern, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay,
Thank you very much.
thank you very much, Mr.
And there was nothing for 6 and 8 turn?
No.
Okay.
Mr. Miller?
Yes, I'll be right back.
Okay, very good.
So there's an empty space. That's what it's talking about. Yeah, it looks like they're accessing from the back here. I don't know what this picture has to do with it unless it's...
I'm Charles Miller, the interim code director, and I have some issues with some trees. I want to make a report to the tree commission. 131 Mill Street property, at your last meeting, you wanted 2 trees planted in the front, and you gave the property owner the new tree ordinance. And I had a meeting with him Friday in my Monday in my office, and he said he's not going to do it. I will be looking at other ways to address this issue. Talked today with a gentleman, 32 Shannon Avenue, North Shannon, and there's a tree there on the right-of-way, And I talked to Mr. Ingram before the meeting, and the owner there wants the tree taken down. And I understand he's been before the tree commission before, and I'm not privy to all the information, but there's not any funds available to take the tree down, and I don't think he wants to take it down, but I think that's the only option that we have here is if the owner wants to take it down.
I thought was
We
this
said no.
the sidewalk problem?
Yeah, this is the
Yeah.
one where there's a sidewalk problem, and initially the permit was for us to pay for he wanted the city to remove the tree. We said no. I gave that to the city service director. I understood that the owner was going to appeal our recommendation to her, and I've not formally been told that she's made a recommendation yet or not. So I will ask the safety director what she knows about this
The
one.
property owner indicated that he was going to be here tonight to talk to you, but
Okay.
he didn't show.
No, I'll follow up with Paula and find out what she
Okay.
decided.
Let me know and then I'll address it.
Yeah. On the first item, by the way, 131 mil, can you put as much as you can in writing, please? So we've got a paper
I
trail.
will. Yes.
Thank you.
And what's their concern about why are they not planting? Do they have a question about it? Do they have not enough space, not enough, just
He
no?
just flat said no.
Okay, I just wanted to see if there's anything else we could help mediate with.
Okay.
No, I think.
Okay, got it.
McDonald's on Richland Avenue was the next address.
Yes?
And what I've been able to find out so far is that the city water department has a 14-inch main water line that runs in front of McDonald's down there.
Okay.
And I know a few years ago, there was a water break there, and they had to do some destruction to some of the landscaping there that was in front of the old building. And the Nick Carr from the sewer and water department prefers that not anything be planted over top of that 14-inch water supply line that supplies the south side. Because if there is a water break, the potential to destroy several $1,000s worth of trees and plantings and what have you. And he just doesn't like to have roots growing around his water line. So that's the information. Now, if there's other information about this address, I don't know about it with respect to landscaping.
What I think I'll do then, I'll come down to your office and pick up a copy of the plans that we approved.
Okay?
And then we'll get together as a tree commission and have a look and see what we think should be done in the light of the
Okay.
fact that we've got an identified utility issue
Yes.
at this point.
That's 14-inch water
Yeah.
pipe. That's a lot of water.
Yeah,
And if it breaks,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
And Nick Carr from the sewer and water department requested that there not be any plantings over top of that water line.
So that water line then is in the right of way, is it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Taco Bell, talked to Mr. and Mrs. Hayes, and they've agreed to take care of the landscaping, and they had a contractor come in and talk to us about some of the plans, and Mr. Ingram and I looked at it, and my last report was that they're proceeding on with the landscaping at Taco Bell. So that's going to happen.
That's good. And I believe they are still within the time frame for coming into compliance with the landscape ordinance anyway. I think this is the end of the planting season.
The way I got the impression, I didn't get a firm commitment, but I got the impression it was going to be done right away.
Good.
So, and the last one I had on my list was Bennigan's, and I've done some research. I have not communicated with them yet. Mr. Pearson did an awful lot of correspondence with the
He
owner.
did, yes.
And in most cases, never even got a response. So
Well,
that's as far as I've gotten with the research on it.
I believe the last time Mr. Pearson addressed us on this issue, there was enough paperwork in place for him to go, or now you, to go to the law director and try and address it at a higher level, because I think the point has been reached that they've been asked.
Needs a letter from
sufficient
the
number
law
of times.
director, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm at that point now, I'm just ready to do something like that.
Very good.
And that's the only the address. Has anybody else got any addresses?
Not at the moment, no. I can see a hand raised down there, Mr. Broadus.
If I may, without coming to the...
Yeah.
Oh. You got a question for me?
No, I wanted
Okay.
to add for you, as you were going down the list, that there's also an unresolved situation at the corner of Schaefer Street and Union.
Schaefer and what?
Union Street. In terms of illegal removal.
Oh, the
Apartment complex?
there's an apartment complex down there that removes.
Thompson Tree.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Chopped it. This is about 2 years old.
Yeah, thank you for reminding us of that one, yes. Yeah,
Thompson Tree, Thomps.
yeah,
I remember that one, yeah.
So it's been,
You say they have already taken a tree down?
no, excuse me, they illegally removed the canopy of these trees on the city.
Yeah, there was some heavy pruning done of the trees on the right of way at
They
that point.
approved that.
Recently?
No,
2 years
2 years ago.
2 years ago.
We kept addressing this, but somehow it's.
Yeah, again, Mr. Pearson was dealing with this at some point.
I'll look for the correspondence.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Title 37, Frequently Asked Questions, is the next item on the agenda. I don't want to go over these in detail. I just want to make people aware that we are looking at this issue. We have, on a number of occasions, been asked how can I comply with the ordinance, what's got to be done, how many trees do I plant, when do I have to plant them, and so on. And so what we're trying to do is assemble a list that can advise not just the code office, but the planner and developers and so on. And hopefully we'll be able to get this up onto the city website as well. So if there are extra ones that you want to add to this list, I've got an improved list now.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. If there are extra ones you want to have me add to this, by all means, send me an email. It's going to be a living document in the sense that it'll keep on growing.
We may find ones to add in about a year or two as we come up,
I'm
as
sure
we
we
hear
will.
questions, yeah.
Yeah. So that's in progress. Okay, I don't think I've got any more landscape ordinance issues. I'm looking around just in case there's something out there I don't know about. Emerald Ash Borer, I don't have any reports on that at the moment. Anne Bonner was not able to be at the meeting this evening. She has competing tree commission meetings, and so she's not able to get to all of them. The fall planting tree list, we had a list go out. I believe it's been out now for a week, of list of trees. I think there's over 20 trees on that list now. Some pretty good sites. I don't know if we're going to be able to afford to plant all of them. I hope we are. And the ones that Mrs. Goldsbury mentioned this evening, we can put those onto the list for next year, certainly. The plan is that we will hopefully get an acceptable bid in the next week or so and be able to move fairly quickly to plant some trees this fall. Tree City USA. Ron, would you like to?
Just going back to the fall planning, once that date is set in stone in terms of when, let me know. And the OOPS locates are good for 10 days.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, the reason I asked you those before was I was trying to avoid us finding a site where we couldn't plant because there was a utility
Yeah.
underneath it.
I could always just call them in and renew them.
Yeah, that's all
If
right.
that's the way we want to go about it, if it's that much of a concern. So,
I don't know.
just let me know.
Yeah.
Tree City USA application, I have the paperwork started. I have the proclamation from the mayor, and I have the Arbor Day information, including pictures. I will need some type of document from the tree commission that identifies the trees that are going to be planted, which I have. I also need the ones that were removed by the tree commission in terms of actual, not ones that just have a permit for.
Okay.
And also trees that were trimmed with tree commission funds.
Okay.
It can be general, like we trimmed some trees on Mill Street. As far as the street department's concerned, I'll include our list of street trees that we've trimmed
Okay.
and ones that we've removed. Because in actuality, we have removed quite a few trees this year. It seems higher than usual, actually, so
Yeah, I don't know.
it's just one of those years, I guess.
I'm going to get with Tanya to find out what orders she sent out, because that's my main thing, I think.
Okay.
with this.
But that's all as far as what we have. I'll probably have it submitted on November 20th, so.
Very good. Thank you. Other business. I'm looking out there in case. I've got Greg. Let's have you then, Lorraine.
Greg Broadhurst, 14 Granville, Athens. This is kind of unusual because I'm up here speaking not only on my own behalf, but also for the street department, and indirectly. Due to the work that took place on my street recently, the Granville Mary project, it was a necessity due to construction. Some trees were removed, small caliper, and also one large 65-year-old mulberry, which was accidentally, well, because of large equipment, these giant backhoes were mobilizing and clipped a limb, and that kind of was, the tree kind of met its demise and had to be removed. Well, I guess what I'm here to ask is, can we put some replantings on that lower Granville area? Most likely, as a certified arborist, I would recommend some large hardwood trees. This is a north-facing slope. It's near a drainage, so dry, cool, moist, and also additionally, the street director had committed to replacing 2 dogwoods that I had planted 10 years ago that had been taken out by a sidearm mower. But this has nothing to. This is like coming up to speed and putting all this in one package. So basically, the request is to plant anthracnose resistant dogwoods, a couple more, and a couple more hardwoods on the uphill slope of Granville from basically the center of my, not the center, the edge of my driveway as you're approaching going uphill, well, it's a slope, and down to Mary Street. We can have further plans for you to consider I'll let myself go out and do the survey for appropriate siting, but I just want to bring that up. And that eliminates the street department having to, it's already got its other duties to do, but I can take care of that.
The trees that were removed, was that the removal part of a city contract?
Yeah. Well, they weren't actually slated for removal on the contract. It's just the circumstance of the construction that you get old work, old streets.
The
And you've got large equipment and stuff gets snagged sometimes.
The reason I ask is that sometimes those contracts include a requirement that the contractor replace trees.
That I can't answer, but
No,
maybe.
but that was why I wanted to find out if it was
Yeah.
a city contractor, because I will check.
There's been some discussion with that I've had with Andy. I can follow up on that.
Okay,
Okay,
that's good.
please
But
do.
I just thought I'd follow up.
Yeah.
I will take care of the suggested siting area, sightings, and even make recommendations for the hardwoods that were to be replaced too.
Okay.
And I'll have that. I'll make contact with. I'll be in contact with the street department as well.
Okay. Very good.
And also, I wanted to know what the tree commission's position is on individuals planting trees in city parks without permission.
We don't approve of it.
All right, I won't go into details now, but I did observe someone doing that a few weeks back, and I will be in touch with the tree commission about that.
Yes, or the city service safety director. It actually comes under her as well, but yes,
Yeah.
do please, because the city parks and the city rights of way, the tree commission and the Title 33, it has to grant approval for that, and the only person who can, I think, override this, other than the council, is the city service safety director. in
Okay,
that regard.
well, thank you.
Thank you. Lorraine.
Hi, I'm Lorraine McCosker. I live at 59 Elmwood. I just wanted to make a comment about the Palmer Place development. I wasn't certain about the ordinance. I haven't read the 2008 ordinance, but I was aware of the 2007 ordinance, or 2005, whenever that was written, and the guidelines regarding parking places and trees. And so I just wanted to make a few comments, and I'm certain everyone on the Tree Commission is aware of this, but I think that the islands of trees within the parking area are really important. They act as a buffer to the urban heat island effect. So you have trees that help cool the asphalt, and that in turn will help cool the surrounding buildings and decrease energy use. So it's just a real simple way of decreasing our energy use and also complying with the Cool Cities Agreement. Also, it's really important that we have stormwater runoff concerns. We've had flooding of sorts, I think, on Stimson Avenue, and certainly I've had a backup in my home since I've lived here as a result of heavy rain. And any kind of groundwater, any kind of ground soil and trees and vegetation help absorb that. Throughout Columbus right now, they're integrating rain gardens to help with stormwater runoff, and that's much cheaper than building more infrastructure. And then, of course, the aesthetics. Right now, you look down from East State into that parking lot. What is that? It's horrible. So, and trees just act as a buffer. They help raise property value. There's research that talks about less violence when you have trees. I mean, it just adds just to an entire harmony of the community. And so I'd encourage you to support really strong tree plantings in that area.
Well, we appreciate this and the fact that people are concerned about it. It has been brought to our attention that people are concerned about that site. The one comment I would like to make is that under both the old and the new ordinance, the developer has 2 planting seasons to come into compliance, and so at the moment they are not out of compliance. And the status is that they've asked us to look at a possible revision. We will look at it very carefully. But as I think you may have heard me comment, I'm a little bit concerned myself that there are fewer tree islands in their new plan than there were in the old one. So thank you for your concern.
Thank you. Yeah, and this the asphalt is impermeable. So
Yes.
I mean, if we did have an ordinance that stated that we would use impermeable materials, that would really help as well.
Yes, we've been working on that one for a while, and we'd like our council member to maybe push a bit more for that one.
I'm definitely aware of it, but and willing to work on it.
Yeah, and I know that Andy Stone from the Streets Department has been looking into trying to find permeable solutions to these parking lots, because that would be the way to help us control stormwater runoff and high temperatures and a whole bunch of other problems all at the same time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else?
One more thing.
Okay.
At the last meeting, I mentioned how I noticed that on Court Street, people were using the trees as to put their bikes on, and I've noticed that there's a lot of damage to those. You know, at closer inspection, some of these trees that didn't have damage have fresh damage, and I don't know if you looked into, you know.
I haven't saw some of the damage, but I have never yet seen a bicycle tied fastened to a tree.
This is during, you know, school hours, of course. This is like when I'm walking through there around noon and things like that. It's not always there, but there's certain trees that it seems. Okay.
Watch, and I haven't seen one yet.
Okay.
I'll deal with it if I see it.
So what would we do about that? Either inform the public that they can't put their trees on, or can't tie their bikes up to these trees, or?
Possibly there could be a news release or something, but unless I find one and I can identify one, it'll be very difficult to deal with.
Okay.
But I've told the officers to look for it. So.
Okay, thank you.
I think another possible solution would be to put bike racks in the locations where they're nearby these trees that are being damaged. And I know the city has a number of bike racks that just haven't been installed yet.
Okay.
Okay,
So
that's good.
so that would be something to,
I think it's Lindy Hall.
yeah.
It's right in front of me.
So
On the
maybe if
south
we could
court
take into
there.
account the fact
Yeah.
that these trees are
Towards
being used
Baker
as
Center.
bike racks and
Yeah, but there's not a lot of space.
look at where we're going to put this.
These are just people being lazy.
Okay, good. Sounds like things might happen. Okay, then if there's nothing else, all we have left are the minutes of the last meeting, of which I think I've got a copy lurking somewhere in my stack of stuff. Oh, here it is, yeah, right in front of me. If anyone needs a copy, I've got one spare copy. Okay. Are there any comments or corrections?
No, they look pretty good.
Can I have a motion to approve then, please?
I'll approve.
Okay, second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. No objections to approving the minutes of the last meeting then? No, thank you. Well, without objection, they're approved. In that case, we will adjourn this meeting. That's it until the next meeting on Thursday, December the 11th at 7 p.m. Thank you.
So it looks like we need to have a